are, Cindy Cherry at one end of the table, and Timothy Cherry, and then Dell at the controls, and we're having a lot of fun. I tell you one thing, Tim, there was a lot of action over the weekend. We'll call it action, okay?
Yep. No, it was funny. We were just watching that Toronto-Ottawa game on the weekend compared to the Calgary-Edmonton game. It looked like an alumni game, the Toronto-Edmonton or Toronto-Ottawa. But boy, the Battle of Alberta and both games this week didn't disappoint.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Let's go over the games over the weekend.
Yeah, we'll talk about those guys.
Yeah, I'll talk about those guys later. Canucks, they won 4-3. Markstrom, the goaltender for Vancouver, is fantastic. I mean, he really is. I mean, they were outshot 17-5 in the third period. Quint Hughes +3, got 3. I mean, this guy's pretty good, And then we have the Jets. Hollebuck made 38 saves, and Leaf Spezza. You know, I didn't know Spezza. He's got 10 goals. I think he's got 10 goals, and he only plays 10 minutes, and he had 6 shots, and I mean, he led both teams in shots. He only played 10 minutes.
You know what? It reminded me last night. He scored a nice goal. He walked down and just hammered the puck past the goalie. They said the shot was 145 kilometers an hour, so that's like, 80 miles an hour. Remember, we had him with the Mississauga Ice Dogs.
Yeah, you're right. And I know what you're going to say. He get over the blue line, he looked to pass.
And then remember what happened?
Yeah, and then I said, I'm going down and shoot the puck. And
you went down and you gave him heck. You said, look, you had such a good shot back then. You said, go down and shoot the puck. So we were playing Kingston. And the goalie, I forget the name of the goalie he was playing against, but he was an NHL goalie. And you could see Jason was mad. Like, he just had that look on his face. And right off the face-off, he gets the puck, and he steps over the blue line, and he let a shot go. It hit the goalie's glove, took the goalie's glove off, knocked it back in the net, and he didn't even celebrate. He skated right to the bench.
He was mad.
He was mad.
The only time I've ever seen a guy get a goal when he's mad.
You know what my memory of Jason Spezza is with the Mississauga Ice Dogs. I work for them too, and I was doing a hockey card. So I thought, Jason Spezza's rookie card's got it. You know, we got to do it right for junior A club. So you know how you ask the questions, your favorite car and this and that. So one of the questions I had was, what's your pet peeve? You know, what's your pet peeve? So all the guys did it, and it's blank. So I go to, remember Steve Cherry, your nephew? I said, Steven, send this down to Jason. He didn't do a pet peeve. So Steve goes down and says, what do you need in Philly? He goes, I don't know what a pet peeve is. And so he says, it's something that pisses you off. And Jason says, well, I can't think of anything. I go, I says, my list is a mile long, and he can't think of one thing.
He was pretty happy-go-lucky back then.
He was a really happy-go-lucky guy. I made it up for him. I said, referees that don't drop the puck. I think that's what I said.
I remember one of the last games I coached. I was trying to teach him on the face-offs, and I was telling him, I looked and he was shooting the puck off the wall. I mean, he was a happy-go-lucky guy. But I tell you one thing, he's with Toronto. He's serious. He knows this is his.
He played a lot last night. Like he played like he was their best player.
He was their best player. He led them in shots. And but the thing that gets me is Matthews a couple of years ago was terrible on draws, and I think he was 10-4 last night. Montreal, Jeff Petrie. I mean, this guy doesn't get the credit. He's +3, and 4 assists last night. And Buffalo. I can't figure out Buffalo. Buffalo are 5-1-0 in the afternoons. They should play. They should play all their games in the afternoon. Boy, I heard a rant. I was listening to the Buffalo station. A guy went on, and they didn't interrupt him. And he was a sportscaster. He went on for 20 minutes. What a rant it was! If the players ever heard that, it would be so discouraging. But he went on and on. But Buffalo, if they could play in the afternoon, they'd be great.
Yeah, a lot of people knock the NHL stuff, but the one thing is really good is there always seem to be tight playoff races, and they're almost as more exciting than the playoffs at times. And you look at the West, it's from first to like fifth is 4 points.
Well, that's what they've worked on. They want the league, they call it, what do they call it? I forget what they call it. What do they call it when they're even? Everybody's even?
They want parity.
Oh, yeah, they want a parity, yeah. I often talk to the Stars, and they don't believe in the parity. They believe there should be a flagship of one great team that when they come in. I remember when Montreal would come in, and when the Stanley Cup, it would be a big deal. Where now, they must be doing something right, because they have, and I think it's better now, because at sometimes at Christmas we'd go into a club, we'd go in halfway through the season, the team would be out of the playoffs, had no chance at all.
Now, I remember getting back to the afternoon games. How were your feelings when you coached the Bruins? You weren't a big fan of the afternoon games, were you?
We were one of the first. The kids. No, I know the players didn't like it. It throws them off. But then and the team on the road used to love it, because there'd be no morning skate. They could sleep in the hotel. They'd have their meal, whereas we had had to take care of everything. We did okay, though, with the Boston Gardens.
That's true.
We never lost.
Because they used to have it that the Bruins would play in the afternoon and the Celtics would play that night. And that was, boy, imagine the fans getting in.
Yeah, the funny thing was, when that happened, they were completely different crowds. There would be 16 whatever Gardens held.
Sure.
The Bruins fans would leave, and then the Celtics would come in. They were completely different fans.
Yeah, and they used to put those boards down, and
the Bull Gang, right?
Yeah, the Bull Gang was great.
Boy, you get out of their way.
Yeah, the Bull Gang. They call them the Bull Gang and everything. But, getting back to the fighting and that, I know that, and I listened to a guy on the air yesterday. And he doesn't believe in the fighting. Yeah, okay, I go along with that. You don't have about 4 or 5 guys jumping on the boards, and all right, people would love it, but I really didn't like the bench clearing brawls. I really didn't like it. A lot of guys get hurt and those things. But let me just tell you how I felt about it with the Boston Bruins. We got 2 guys from New York. One was Jean Rattel, great scorer and everything, but he had a bad back. His back was so bad that he was a semi-pro golfer. He had to stop golfing. We had to have a board put on it, but the word was out: don't touch Rattel. If you touch him, we would forfeit a game to make sure you never did it again. And the same thing was with Park. Park used to lead the New York Rangers. Brad Park was a superstar behind Bobby. Used to be the second defenseman behind Bobby Orr. So and he would, and guys could get him be like pests. Remember that guy for Detroit? I forget his name. Dennis something.
Dennis
Polanic. Boy, he got it from Wilf Paymont. Remember that?
Yep. he fooled with the wrong guy
he
there.
He fooled the wrong guy, Wilf Paymont. So anyhow, yeah, I remember he cut him. And,
he hit him with the stick.
He hit him with the stick. And Paymont was, boy, he had those funny eyes. I remember a story. I digress here, but I have to. We got a guy, great big Irish guy, and he had a beard on. And he kept telling me what he's going to do to Paymont. He played with Paymont in Colorado, and Paymont didn't like him, and he didn't like Paymont. And I thought, this guy sounds pretty tough. So we played him. I kept putting him on against Paymont. Never did a thing.
But just the thing with Wolf, you were always saying that there are guys in the league that you just didn't fool around with. And like Schmatz, Bobby Schmatz was one. Wolf Paymont was another one.
Yeah, because they used their stick, and they used anything. And I remember this guy had a big beard, and he didn't touch Paymont at all, didn't even look sideways at him. So he said, Don, I know you don't like beards. He said, I'll shave it off. As it's in the shower. As I walked by, I said, no, I'll leave it on. Leave it on, because you're not going to stay long. So what was it? Oh, yeah, Brad Park. So Brad Park, they had Brad Park off all the time because he would be fighting guys that never, ever played, but he'd be fighting. So finally I had a meeting, and I said, if you fight again, I'm going to put it in the league that you're fined and the whole deal. And he read deep in his heart, he did not want to fight. I know he didn't, but he'd stick up for himself and everything. He says, yeah, but what happens if a guy spears me? I said, don't worry, we'll have a guy there. Well, and we did. And
well, I remember, you talk about John Rattel, that we were playing, it was towards the end of the season, and we were playing a big game against the Islanders in the Islands, and I think we were 2 points up on Buffalo, so this was a big game. This was our game on hand. And who was it? Gary Hart hit John Rattel.
I think it was the guy with the curly blonde hair. And I remember John wincing. John did what he should have done. He grabbed this guy and nailed him up against the boards with about, I forget how many go. And all the players went, what is he, nuts? This is for first place.
The game was tied at the time.
And I remember Now I have to stick up for John because I almost fainted too. I couldn't believe he got a penalty for, there's time to do it, time not to do it, and come on, it's okay, don't touch our ratty, I don't care, and I'm losing. And I called a penalty, called the killers over, and I said, look, if you ever kill a penalty, this is the penalty to kill.
And they did.
And they did.
And guess who got the winning goal?
And a backhand from in front of the net was Jean Rattel. So we had, just to go on with those two guys, the only reason that New York traded them was he had a bad back. And I remember the cartoon was in the paper. It had Harry Sinnen, who made the trade, great trade for Harry Sinnen. It had a guy with a broken leg because Park was supposed to have a broken leg. Well, he's too heavy to start with. You know what they call him? The Pillsbury boy. So Park did not fight again after that. We had a guy right there, and the word was out in Rattel. So what I'm trying to say is take a look at all the stars right now. Take a look at McDavid. He's always hurt. I mean, I hate to say it, but he's hurt every year. Take a look at Crosby. Crosby's hurt every year. Remember a few years ago, they never had anybody to protect Lemieux. He was always hurt all the time. I remember Kasparaitis, Darren Kasparaitis, the little Russian, slapped him in the face when he was down. And Lemieux used to be reduced to, as I say, as diving, and because nobody was there to protect him. Now, let's jump ahead to Gretzky. Now, we'll go on with Gretzky. The reason Gretzky was never hurt, I remember Billy McCreary hit him at the blue line, and by accident, Gretzky got a little careless. And McCreary never, ever got back on the ice again in the National Hockey League to save his life. Anyhow, it was Billy McCreary. I remember, and I was doing the color of that game. I remember Gretzky was on the bench calling, Sammy, and he was talking about Semenko. So the reason was you never touched Gretzky.
Well, I remember in Colorado, your year in Colorado was their first year in the league, and Ron DeLorme just kind of accidentally bumped into him.
They were looking the other way, and they bumped into each other, and they were actually coming on the bench after him. And he turned to me, he says, Grapes, I didn't mean to hit him. I didn't mean it. Not that Ronnie DeLorme was afraid or anything. So what I'm saying is he set all those records. He was never hurt because of two guys, Marty McSorley and David Semenko. And that's what I try to say is it should have, I'm not going in the Instigator rule again, but you got to tell us about the Instigator, Tim.
When they were bringing the Instigator rule in, they were trying to justify it because there was people like yourself and other people were saying how bad it was. And their philosophy was, they said, well, first of all, the game's getting too big and there's too many fights, and the little guys can't play anymore in the league, and that and they were the most ridiculous thing was that there was that the fighters were going after the stars, and that they were saying that if they got Instigator rolling and they had less fights, they had two things they said were going to happen. First, they said there was going to be more goals, and then they said the fans were going to enjoy it more, which okay, that's ridiculous, but. If you look at the year that Gretzky set the record with 212 points, that was 81-82. There was 1,300 majors in that year, as compared to last year, there was like 400 and some, just over 400. But that year that when they had the 1,300 majors, there was 100 players that had 13 players that had over 100 points, and then last year there was 6. There was 10 players that got 50 goals. Last year, there was 2. There was 40 players, or 22 players that had 40 or more goals. Last year, there was 13. Dave Howardchuk, he was a rookie, he was 18, set a record for 103 points. So obviously, the goals were up. Even with the 1,300 majors that were going on, the goals were up, and that's with 2 less games and seven less teams in the league. The ridiculous thing was they were saying that the small players couldn't play, and you had Dennis Marouk, Denis Savard, Marcel Dion, and Dino Ciccarelli, who were all small guys, were in the top 10 in scoring. So it was just, you just sit back and you say, what were they thinking about?
Well, this is, Dad, what you always talk about is the culture of hockey, right? There's a culture of hockey that some people know the ins and the outs of it.
Calgary and Edmonton sure live up to it. I'll tell you that. It was funny. You're right, Cindy, that it was really funny that you were talking about they were really pumping the game in Calgary, and Edmonton on Friday night, and they showed the game of Tampa and LA.
Yeah. It was on a writer for Barstool, who is like, they were one of the leading internet guys on writing, and he went insane on the National Hockey League, saying how they have no idea how to promote the league, they have no idea what the fans want, and this guy's a hardcore hockey fan, and there's a lot of hardcore hockey fans in the U.S. And remember, it was the Battle of Alberta, it was Turtlegate, they were just pumping it, and so this guy, he lives in the States. And he was sit down ready to watch the game, and it was on NBC Sports. And he says the irony was it was called Wednesday Night Rivals. So he's sitting there thinking, "This is boy, I can't wait." Tate Cassie, and he's all excited.
That was a great one too.
And he was going, and then he looks, and they had NBC and the NHL showed Tampa Bay and LA. He said, first of all, they play each other once every 3 years,
and really, who cares?
Who cares, right? Yeah. And he goes, so I'm sitting there, and he says, I'm trying to go on the internet to find out what's going on. I see Cassie, I see they're fighting. He said, I was so mad. And he goes, it just shows, he says, that the NHL doesn't listen to what the fans want.
Tim, they listen to the people that are in the media who wouldn't go to the games if they had to pay. They listen to the people that don't like hockey, and they listen to the people that wouldn't watch hockey. They should always, and there's a lot of organizations around that should listen to the people that buy the beer and watch the games. But those people, and all you have to do, people in Edmonton, you think they don't know hockey? You think the people in Calgary don't know hockey? They've been watching it since they were a kid. They went nuts in those games. And and I'm not saying that to go back to the 70s when they had bench clearing brawls, like I said, and things like that.
Yeah, because the rinks aren't big enough. The rinks aren't big enough.
Well, Conn Smythe said it. We have to stop that fighting in the game because we'll have to build bigger rinks. Everybody knows it, but they can't do anything. Listen, I understand you can't go back to the 70s, like I said, but you should not be so. How would I say it? So tough on the guys that fight. I got to tell something. The linesmen and the referees were pretty good on that, Cassie. And someday I'm going to tell a story about Probert. Maybe I should tell it now about the time but Ron McLean and I.
Well, why don't we'll do that in a minute. Well, let's first talk about Calgary and Edmonton, the two games. What are your thoughts on that? And then we'll talk about one of the most anticipated fights ever in the National Hockey League. Well, there was two. Probert and Ty, and then Probert and Crowder. But so, what did you think? Though they played last week, and right off the bat, what did you think of Cassian and Tkachuk?
Well, Tkachuk, I was tough on that kid, but I'm sure his dad had a lot to do with that, and he stood up for himself. And he's a better hockey player because he is a good hockey player. He just has to stop it. He's not a pest. He's too good for that. He's a real good hockey. He's a real good hockey player. But here's the funniest thing that I cannot understand is they have a great crowd in Edmonton, and they've only got 13 wins, and they have 14 on the road, which is, it doesn't make any sense. And Calgary is the same thing. Great fans at home, and they've only got 13 wins at home and 14 on the road. Why they play better on the road than they do at home is a tough one.
Yeah. So, Dad, you were saying, like, right off the bat, Cassian said that Tkachuk wanted to fight right away, but you have a reason why you think he made him wait a little bit.
Well, what happened was that Tkachuk wanted to get it over with, and he was ready. He was ready, and Cassian wasn't quite ready. And I'm sure he said something to the effect as, wait a minute, kid, we'll get playing a little bit here. And what he wanted to be ready, as same as Tkachuk was ready. And it was a dandy. But how about the two goalies going at it?
That was the next night, but that was the next one. But I think the better fight was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Sean Monahan. That was Monahan's first fight. And you said that the difference between it was, what was the difference between those two?
Well, the difference is when you fought a guy that never fought before, he was fighting because he was mad, and they were really mad at one another. Whereas Cassian, and there was a good fight, Tkachuk, but they were two good fighters that were fight. But boy, those two young. Who was it? It was Ryan June.
Nugent Hopkins, and that was his third NHL fight, and Sean Monahan, that was his first NHL
Well,
fight.
I'll tell you something. They were throwing him pretty good. Looked like they've thrown him in junior or something. But
the crowd was just
going nuts,
going insane, and they were all banging on the boards.
And it's a funny thing to watch last night. The only time the players bang the boards and stand up, the only time is when there's a fight on. That's the only time. A goal, okay. But when there's a fight on, I tell you, the fans love it. The players don't mind it, evidently. The coaches don't mind it. And the crowd goes wild. So the only people that don't like it, and I was listening to a guy yesterday, are the people that get in free, the media type guys.
Yeah, and then Tim, what did you say the tagline is for the guys that are doing the color on the game? Let's now they're going to get back to playing hockey.
Let's get back to hockey.
Yes.
Like they have no idea, and they have no idea.
They do, Cindy. Cooler heads prevail. I like that one. Cooler heads prevail.
Yeah.
I like that. And they want to keep their job. And
yes,
that's it.
This is true.
And some guys are stupid that don't want to keep their job.
This is true.
But
so then they played 2 days later. They played Saturday night, and I didn't think there was anything was going to happen. 'Cause usually it's once the fight's over, it kind of went on. But my theory is I think that Edmonton was mad that the goalie Rittich threw a stick in the air after they won the game.
Yeah, but
and it looked to me like Edmonton was sky high for that game last night.
Well, again, they played good on their road. They nailed them, and I just don't understand it. But they were sky high. But when you watch that McDavid play, boy, he is.
What did you think of Giordano when?
No, I could understand McDavid being mad, remember banging a stick and breaking a stick, $300 stick. I could understand him. I don't know Giordano. See, Giordano was the guy that tripped him. He went into the goalpost.
Yeah,
and then he sticks his knee out like that, and he didn't stick his knee. He stuck his behind out. I think he got caught.
He was flat-footed for sure.
Flat-footed, and he just I'll just kind of But boy, did McDavid. When you get hurt at a certain knee or your eye or something like that, you go bananas. And he go bananas on the bench. I think he just went trying to.
Was this the game that the goalies were fighting, Tim?
No, that was the first game.
Oh, the first game, yeah.
And then Saturday they got into it again.
I think they did pretty good. Smith and the other guy.
There's something about watching goalies fight.
Well, they said you want to go, you want to go, you want to go. But I think that.
I think, first of all, I think Bear did a good job. The smaller defensemen grabbed Taychuk, and they talk about Cassian and Taychuk. There's a big difference in height. There really isn't. I mean, they're not
both the same.
There was a big difference with Taychuk and Bear, and again last night that was Bear's first fight.
Yeah,
and he took on Taychuk, was good, but there's a picture now floating around on the internet. And in case you people didn't see the fight, what happened was there was a fight, and Talbot, the goalie for Calgary, kind of got into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the Oilers goalie, Smith, came out and he stood at the blue line. He didn't cross the blue line, but he stood at the blue line just in case Talbot jumped in again. And there's a photo now on the internet that somebody took with their cell phone of Nurse looking at Talbot and pointing to Smith saying, "There he is. You started it," and so Talbot did. He was the guy that went out, and Smith is a lot bigger than him, but
it was pretty good. I think the best fighter. I've seen quite a few. I think when we had it, Cheevers never fought. Well, he did earlier.
Can I guess which one you're going to say? I'm going to say when Ronnie Hextall and the Toronto goalie were going
Felix
at
Potvin.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I think Felix Potvin was the best goalie I ever saw fight. Hextall was good, but I didn't think Hextall thought that fight
he wasn't ready.
I didn't think Felix Potvin was that. He probably didn't think he was that good of a fighter. Potvin.
Well, he was a little guy, and I didn't think he was that good either. But boy, he was the best goalie. I thought Hextall was good. Mike Vernon was good. Remember Mike Vernon had it with Patrick Waugh.
Patrick Waugh, yeah.
That was
Osgood had a good fight with Patrick Waugh.
Can I tell a good story about Tim and Ronnie Hextall?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I remember Ronnie Hextall and you, because his dad played with you, Dad, Brian Hextall in Rochester. And I remember his mom used to come down, and you guys used to play mini sticks down in the basement. Do you not remember playing?
No,
yeah.
I don't.
Oh yeah. I remember. And Mom would be having coffee, and you'd score on Ronnie Hextall, and because you're at. And he would start crying. He wasn't going to play anymore. And they were always breaking up fights between you and Ronnie Hextall. Fast forward, 20 years, 25 years. Mom and I are watching Ronnie Hextall in nets for, what would it be? Philly? Yeah. Probably. And he's going crazy because remember
he ran out of his crease.
Oh, he's always complaining to the referee. And he was always thinking. So Mom turns to me and says, he really hasn't changed, has he? He goes, he's just like when he was a little boy, carrying on about the referees. It's not fair. And every time I think of Ronnie Hextall, I think of you guys.
That was when he went after Chelios.
Yeah, and he ran out of his crease, and he saw Chelios doing something, and he ran.
When was the last time you saw that? A goalie going after a forward from the other side?
Well, he ran. Last night, that Talbot went after him, but. I remember the one we're talking about goalie fights. Then we'll get in after this. We'll talk about you and Ron going to see Troy.
Probert.
Remember there was another brawl. This was the second brawl we had in Atlanta. Gilly Gilbert and Bouchard.
Bouchard. Dan Bouchard.
I don't know what happened, but boy, I remember they both had long hair.
Well, I think they were both backups at the time, and they were both mad that they weren't playing, and I mean, I couldn't believe. The violence of it was unbelievable, and boy, I think Gilly thought he was hitting me, but anyhow, they were just. I remember Bouchard. He could throw him too.
Yeah, I remember they both had kind of long hair.
Yeah,
and their hair was going all over the place, and then they hit like it was as good as the Osgood Patrick Waugh fight, and then they fell to the ground and they. They got up with their goalie equipment and went at it again. And I've scoured the internet looking for that footage. We can't find it, but boy, that was one of the. I think all the players stopped and kind of looked to see.
Yeah, they couldn't believe it.
It's always interesting to how the players when they watch the goalies fight, they're like in awe, like
that's what happened last night. They were Bear and Taychuk were fighting, and then the other two guys fought, and you can see them kind of stop and look and say.
It doesn't happen too often. But the best, and I have to say that I've seen over the years, the best goalie that I've seen fighting, like I said, is Felix Potvin, and the little guy, and the little smallest guy. But I somebody told me that he took up boxing when he sure could throw him.
So the Battle of Alberta, they were two really anticipated games, and everybody was waiting to see if Taychuk and Cassian,
and they were ready.
They were going to fight. But I think probably there was two more anticipated fights in the league, and that was the rematch with Probert and Ty. Tommy. But the one we'll talk about was...
Well, first of all, let me just say about Ty. And the reason that... I've only seen Probert really ticked off. He was pretty impassive in a fight, and he was ticked off twice. And Ty let on... that he had the heavyweight champion of the NHL.
He fought
in New York,
Bob, and he probably you would say he got the better of him.
And he did. He won that fight. Now Probert, I know, is just and then a rematch. But anyhow,
when Ty went to the box, he went like the
heavyweight.
I
think Messier told him to don't do that stuff anymore, and he didn't. But I remember Troy Crowder. I was sitting.
Well, we'll listen.
Jump ahead.
No, we'll listen to Bob. We had him on the Grapevine show. So we had Bob Probert on the Grapevine show, and I have to say this that
he was nervous too.
Oh, and he was shy. He's pretty shy. Anyway.
He's a shy guy, and
we
remember he had a bad hair day.
Yeah. That's what you said to him. What'd you say to him? Say, Bob, what's the hair?
What's with the hair? He says, yeah, I'm having a bad hair day. It was like, and then go ahead.
So. What we did with the Grapevines, we talked about it before, was we used to have, we shot these ones in the restaurants, and then it almost became like dinner theater, right, Cindy? It was like...
Dino Cicerelli, my buddy.
So what happened was we would say to the people, this week, in this show we would have so-and-so, and then people would phone in reservations for the show, and we had a lot of players. We had Bob on with Dino Cicerelli, and we were shooting it in the Mississauga Grapevine at Square One, and Patrice was the manager at the bar at the time, and she said, she says she didn't know hockey that well, and she says, who do we have on this weekend? And I said, Dino Cicerelli and Bob Probert. She says, Bob who? I said, Bob Probert. She says, well, who is he? And I said, well, he's the heavyweight champ of the National Hockey League. She says, well, I thought he was the Pope. And I go, what do you mean? She says, the phone has not stopped ringing. People wanted to go in.
He was
and
a great guy.
We had all, we had a lot of we had Molson's and a bunch of sponsors. They all wanted, it was the first time they said that they wanted seats, front row. And we sold out, and there was people banging on the door to get in. I think of all the players who were like playing at the time when we interviewed him, he was by far the most popular. We had people drove up from Detroit to see him.
And it's a funny thing. It's the same thing that would happen with Probert. Everywhere he went, he was. And I'll tell you a story about the Battle of the Blades, that he was so excited, and they told him he had, and I never forgot this. They told him he had to learn how to skate on figure skates. So he went all summer, worked hard on the figure skates, and boy, figure skating and the blades are a lot different. So he learned, and then Ty shows up and Ty says, I'm not wearing them. And so he was, and he loved, and the only reason that people, and I have to say it, the only reason was to see Probert and Ty Domi, and they cut him the first show.
Yeah.
They cut him the first.
The Battle of the Blades.
Battle of the Blades. They talk
he
about.
was the first to go home, and you're thinking, there again, marketability. You think they would have kept, to see Probert and Ty.
Well, they did. They fooled around. And they should have kept him for about 3 shows because everybody tuned in. The only reason they tuned in was to see Ty and Probert, and they cut him the first show. I'll tell you, what really hurt him, Danielle, his wife told me that it broke his heart that he was out, because he was a great guy, and everybody told me he was a great guy, that he used to go out and get the pizza and stuff like that. They loved him.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't remember with the Battle of Blades. You were a judge on that. How did you feel about judging those guys?
I didn't. I said I'd never go back again. I said,
You
what am
hated
I
judging.
doing here?
Yeah,
When I'm judging, I had no idea. But Battle, we're getting off of. It is amazing to watch those guys in the Battle of the Blades.
Well, remember they had who was the guy with the bow tie that was the one judge who was a figure skating judge?
Oh yeah, I forget his name. The old guy.
The old guy. And I remember after the first, I think you were there the first or second show, and he goes, "This is a disaster. This is a disaster." And you said to him, well, what do you mean it's a disaster? He goes, I think the players are really doing well. You got mad. He goes, no, it's a disaster for figure skating. He said, you have these old hockey players, and he says, they're doing unbelievably good. He goes, he was
good, and they cut him. He was too good.
Yeah.
Entertaining.
Yeah. So we'll get back to, let's go.
Okay.
We'll back. So we had Bob Probert on, and here's a little clip of Bob talking about tie downs and Joey Kosar and Detroit Crowder. And when we come back, you'll go into more detail about the Troy Crowder.
Tonight in the Grapevine, we got Dino Cicerelli, the Detroit Red Wings. But first of all, let's introduce the heavyweight champion of the NHL, Bobby Probert. My buddy. All right. Yes, sir. I'm getting so carried away, I'm putting it over here. Now, look. What would I do without you? On Rock'em Sock'em 5 and 4 and 5 and 3 and 2 and them all. This guy is the star of them all. Is he not? Most popular guy. Now look. Willie Plett, I'm going to ask you a question. Willie Plett did something I couldn't believe what he did. I used to be a pretty good fighter in my day. I don't know whether I can take this guy, but what are you laughing at? Anyhow, he did something. When I used to be through fighting, I don't know whether it happened to you or not, my neck I'd always have a stiff neck from the guys pulling on the sweater. I mean, I'd be walking around like this all the time. But Willie Plett, I saw him at a fight one time. He cut the back of his sweater, and he just went down about that far, stitched it up. When you pull it, give away. Do you ever think, you don't even tie yours down?
Well, I used to, but then for a while there, I tried it the other way, and it seemed to work, so I just kept on.
How come no tie downs? I mean, I don't understand that.
Just forgot.
You just forget all the time. Tell you. Yeah, I tell you, he doesn't need them, I guess. Now, Joey Kosar, the Bruise Brothers, his hands are really bad. How come your hands are all right? How come you don't hurt your hands?
I've been lucky. Joey had a bad experience in the minors his first year, and he hit somebody in the tooth, and it was infected, and he almost lost his arm. So they had to operate, and he's got a big scar on it now.
Boy, I'll tell you, a lot of guys, when they hit, they just want to hit the guy. When
Oh,
Joey
he wants to
hits,
hit, yeah.
Joey wants to put it out the back of your head. That's the only problem with him. But anyhow, let me ask you one last question before we get to Dino. Do you find it tough? Every city you go in, there's a young gunfighter, and if he ever beats Probert, you know, it's a feather in his cap. Is it tough?
Well, it's happened a lot in the past, and yeah, you know, it gets old, but it's still a job for me, and you know, I gotta stand up for my reputation, I guess.
I got a story to tell you. When we do our show, I'm gonna tell you a story. This is a true story. I was in New Jersey. I think it was New Jersey or the island. I forget who was there. Troy Crowder was there. It was 2 years before he had his fight with you, right? So I'm sitting there watching the morning skate. He was in the playoffs, and he come up and he says, "You know, I'm as tough as Probert." I said, "Sure you are, kid." And he said, "Someday I'll prove it." He still hasn't proved it, but that's it. That's the way it is. 2 years before I met him, they were talking about he could hardly wait to play him, and must be tough.
Okay, Dad. So, you know, we're kind of running a little bit long. So what we'll do is, we'll talk about
This is
marketing.
what they do on television and radio.
This is called a cliffhanger.
Oh, is that what they call it?
Yes. We'll on the Thursday show, we'll talk about the Bob Probert, Troy Crowder fights. And
how it came about.
How it came about. And you and Ron went down to see the rematch. And then we'll talk about a movie that you saw.
I love the movie too. 1917, boy, if you haven't seen it, we'll talk about that Thursday too.
Okay, so that's Thursday, and we'll see you Thursday.